All right, here we are. Dr. William Painter for Journey Road Ministries. Going to sing a little song like I always do. And after the song, you can click back in and listen to something a little more edifying, I suppose. So here we go. Why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know that they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered and wished on a morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed him, and look what it's done so far. What's so amazing and keeps us stargazing, and what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Have you been half asleep, and have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Are these the sweet sounds that call the young sailors? I think that they're one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. The lovers, the dreamers, and me. There, made it through that without too much upheaval. See you on the flip side.
Okay, I'm back, just like I threatened. Dr. William Painter again in my office. No backgrounds. You can see all my fantastical inspirations around. Today's gospel comes from Mark chapter 7, verses 1 through 8. 14 through 15, and 21 to 23. Now when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around him, they noticed that some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands, that is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders. And they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash, and there are also many other traditions that they observe, the washing of cups and pots and bronze kettles and beds. So the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not walk according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" He said to them, "Isaiah prophesied rightly about you, hypocrites. As it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandment of God and hold to human tradition." Then he called the crowd again and said to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: sexual immorality, theft and murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, debauchery, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person. Thus endeth the gospel. Well, once again, we've got a perfect example of Rebel Jesus. There's a lovely song by Jackson Browne. It's not as pretty as the Rainbow Connection, but it is descriptive of this rebel Jesus. And what he's saying here, what's going on here, obviously, is that there are the Pharisees want to catch him out. That's what they want to do. They want to catch him out, catch him breaking the rules. Right? And, quite honestly, Jesus is a big rule breaker. I mean, he worked on the Sabbath. He fed people who were hungry. He clothed people who didn't have clothing. You know the story. He did all those things. And people, as a result, people followed him. And his word, what came out of his heart, was pure. And he didn't care about being defiled by not following tradition. I worked with a young man when I lived in England, and he was a traditional Jewish person, Orthodox. There we go. He was Orthodox Jew, and I worked with him every day. Our desks were in the same room, so I thought this is a great opportunity for me to find out about them. So I said, well, Michael, tell me about your practices around dairy. And he said, well, we have certain pots and pans that we use for dairy, and certain pans we use for meats, and certain pans we do for this. And I said, but you don't eat pork at all. No, it's forbidden. I said, well, I understand why it was forbidden, in the ancient times, because it was an unhealthy meat. It was considered unhealthy. You could get trichinosis from it and die. But with today's modern, pharmacology and modern agricultural methods, we don't get trichinosis. We don't get borer worms that burrow into our brain from our intestinal tract. That doesn't happen. So it's not unclean, no more unclean than chicken is. And he said, yes, I understand that. And I wasn't arguing with him, mind you, and he knew I wasn't arguing. I'm just like, this is my understanding. And please, he said the reason they follow these elaborate traditions, one of them was that he had to be home before sundown on a Friday, and for prayers or something, he had to be home. And in England, in Manchester, it was really hard to get home before sundown if you got off work at 5:00. Because the days were really quite short. It's if you look at where England is in relationship to the equator, in the summer days are long and the winter days are quite short. And I would go to work, in the dark, and I would come home in the dark. Well, here's Michael. He needed to get home, and he appealed to the director, GM, to say, look, can I leave early? Can I come in early? Can I, make arrangements? And the GM was fine with it, although some of the other employees were a little resentful, thinking he was trying to get away with something. Michael was never trying to get away with anything. So I asked him, I said, well, why do you do this? You know that it doesn't matter, right? And he said, it is our way of expressing our devotion to God by following these traditions. And I didn't push it any further than that, because to push it past an explanation is to challenge it, and I'm not about to challenge his faith, or anybody else's for that matter. So in relationship to this, we have here these people who follow traditions, but they don't follow the will of God. And they're hypocrites. He calls them hypocrites right in the text. He said, you hypocrites. And when you look around, you see people, they follow the rules. They go to church on Sunday. They don't have sex before they get married. They don't drink. They don't smoke. They follow all the rules that are established by their culture. But these are the same people who send people to prison, who don't work in the food bank, who don't want who want to criminalize homelessness. So on the one hand, they follow the rules. And on the other hand, their hearts are so evil and degraded that they cannot be considered followers of Christ. They are followers of rules, not followers of Christ. Now, my purpose here is not to point the finger, although I do. I have been accused of finger wagging more than once, and I do have a very waggy finger in that regard. My point here is to ask you to reflect on how do you follow the rules of your heart, the rules of Jesus, the rules of God, and not the rules of society and of humans. Back in the 60s, there were two brothers, the Berrigan brothers. They were priests, and they were notorious for demonstrating against the war in Vietnam, and they were arrested over and over and over again, and they were faced trials, and they broke these rules. Not only rules, they broke the law because of their faith, because their faith compelled them to break the rules, to break the law in order to adhere to the true tenets of their faith. To bravery, a lot of courage to do that. And we see people today who are true to the tenets, to the core, to the seed of Christianity, but who don't follow the rules established by society. Okay, they're outsiders. One person of faith once told me, if you want to find Jesus, go hang out with the people who live on the margins, because that's where he was. Okay, that's where Jesus was. He wasn't hanging out with the rich donors. He wasn't hanging out with the powerful. He wasn't hanging out with the Roman consul who was there. He hung out with thieves, with prostitutes, and with people who lived on the margin, because they are the people who needed to hear his message the most. They needed it the most. That's where he was. And I saw another one. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, a lovely meme that says, I want to be such a good Christian that that no one wants to hang out with me, that I'm hanging out with disreputable folks. Today, my wife and I were coming back from a late lunch, and she said, "Look, can we stop by the library? I need to pick up something at the library." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure. Let's stop by the library." And there were a couple of kids who had sort of snuck into the anteroom. This is a Sunday. They're not supposed to be there. But his two little teen girls or preteen girls were there. And they were just talking. They had found a safe place where they could just sit and talk to each other. They weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't doing anything weird. They were just talking. They were just being teen kids, And as we continued our walk home, she said, "Don't bother them. They'll leave, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to lock the door so that we, because once the word gets out, then there may be trouble. Not good trouble either, right?" I wanted to go and ask him, "What are you doing here?" And she said, No, don't bother them. Let them be. And as we walked home, we walked past 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 churches that were closed, that weren't open to young people on a Sunday. They were closed. And the young people in this little town have no place to go, no safe place to go. And so they hang out at a restaurant and they get into trouble because they're rowdy. Or they hang out at the library and they get into trouble because they're rowdy. Because there isn't any place for them to be and to be safe and to be supervised. They're just out. I don't know whether this is a family issue. Is their home life not great? Or is it because they seek privacy? I don't know why. I didn't ask. I know it's the case for some of the kids, is that their home life is really bad. And places like the library are one of the few places they can go and be safe. And so, yeah, they're breaking a rule. And people can say, oh, they're going to get in trouble. Oh, they're in danger. They're okay. They're safe. We're going to go back over there. We're going to lock that door. We're going to make sure that nobody else gets in. But then I'm left wondering, where will they go? Can they go to be safe? Why is it that we, as a Christian community, adhere to the rules, but we don't adhere to the Spirit? And every church every church was closed. Every church was closed. And now when people say to me, well, why don't people go to church? I'll tell you, that's why. Because the churches are more interested in following rules and traditions than they are of speaking the Spirit of Christ in the community. So, with that in mind, have a wonderful week. See you in 3 weeks. God bless. Be careful. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take care of your communities. God bless.